Hello and a very warm welcome to Insight. I'm Amandra Bhatt. Today we discuss the ongoing political crisis in Thailand after resisting street protests for months. Thai Prime Minister Yingluck Shinawatra has been ousted by a court ruling. She has been found guilty of abuse of power. The court said she acted illegally when she transferred her national security advisor, although Ms. Shinawatra has denied these allegations. But these developments have thrown Thailand into yet another wave of political uncertainty, and as the political crisis there, which has been going on for months, takes a new turn, we discuss what's the road ahead for that country. And to discuss the developments in Thailand, we are joined in our studios by three distinguished guests. Please welcome. We are joined by Professor Sreeram Chaulia, a Dean in the Jindal School of International Affairs. Welcome to Insight, Professor Chaulia. Professor Chaulia, what do you think is going to happen next? Are the supporters of Ms. Shinawatra, the Pheu Thai party, they are going to appeal? What's going to happen next? Because they have said they are going to stage mass protests this weekend.
Politics of polarization is just going to get worse and worse. There are going to be massive demonstrations and counter-mobilization in the south by the conservative establishment against the red shirts. And I am afraid, I mean, there have been so many instances like this before where coups have led to bloodshed on the streets, even massacres in some cases. Formal coup, I mean, it's not obviously a military coup, because if you go back in Thai history, in 1932 onwards, since the abolition of absolute monarchy, there have been like a dozen military coups. The last was 2006. Since then, there are these new trends where they have decided the military coups draw just too much international condemnation and are just totally illegitimate. Therefore, they are using civilian props and using civilian institutions like the judiciary to achieve the same outcome, which is to prevent any radicalization and radical redistribution in the society. Because what Thaksin and his family members and his party stand for is in a way a leftover of what used to be the Communist Party of Thailand. Although they have a pro-business attitude as well, they in a way, essentially, it's a kind of welfare populism with a very left-wing orientation. And that is, anathema to the conservative establishment. So I think they have in many ways put the system's legitimacy into even greater peril than used to be the case. And what is going to happen now, I think, is more confrontation. And they will, essentially, because they are unable to win elections, a time may come when they will try to even ban, any party that is formed by the Red Shirt movement and by Thaksin Shinwatra, who is in exile. I think that's their only option, because what happens is there used to be a party which was then dissolved under the pressure of these judicial decisions and persecution by the state. And then it has metamorphosed into new parties. So Pheu Thai itself is not necessarily going to survive because of the consistent pressure and the blackmail tactics being used against it by the entrenched undemocratic machinery of the state. So you may see new incarnations coming up. I mean, people in the north and the northeast, where they are very strong, the Shinawatras, say that, even if you have a dog running on the red shirt with a red shirt on, we will vote for them. So what it means is that you're going to see, and unfortunately what it means is there are no deeply entrenched party system. You need a party system for stability and turnover of power. But if you have a system where, parties are not even being allowed to flourish and to complete their terms, I mean, frankly, all these decisions and coups are hacking against the will of people, because if people vote, and you should respect the verdict and allow leaders to complete their term, but they're not allowing them. So what it does is it puts into question. Remember, in a regional context, barring Indonesia, there's hardly any democratic country with any decent turnover of power in the entire ASEAN bloc. And Thailand is right there in the center. It could have been, because of the radicalization, because social mobilization, could have been a force for democratization of the region. Unfortunately, that's not happening.
Professor Chaulia, what do you think?
Yeah, it's a kangaroo court. I mean, there's no doubt about it. And I think what the monarch, when King Bhumibol was in a healthier physical condition, what he had done was to ensure, so many legal protections for the honor and dignity of the Chakri dynasty, as well as to maintain their privileges over the economy. Royalists controlling most of the sectors, some form or the other, along with senior military generals. So the judiciary was meant as a protective, a shield for the establishment, and was meant to promote a legal system that would enshrine their privileges forever. So whichever force comes and tries to threaten that, the judiciary is meant to strike them down. And from lèse-majesté laws, I mean, the Thai courts have been notorious for preserving the extreme right-wing establishment that's been there all the way from the Cold War era until now. So I think the courts have been used as handmaidens, and the independence of these judges, I mean, I don't think we need to even scrutinize their qualifications. It's clear these are appointed figures who are doing the bidding of the royalists. I think the king himself is now sick and old, but there is this cabal around him who've been trying to run this show for the last 4 or 5 years. And the big question, really, one which we need to think through, is what's going to happen when King Bhumibol passes. I mean, that is when there's going to be obviously a struggle, and they're going to try and reinstate next generation. And the princes are not particularly known for their acumen. So this coterie around the king, and which has been using his interests and using Buddhism and using all these values to try and crush Thaksin and his movement, they are, I think, in many ways the biggest beneficiaries of these underhanded judicial behavior and all these coups that keep happening. And the question is, I mean, if they are totally against the interests, their larger national interests and public interests, is there going to be a revolution? I mean, it's a class war-like situation, right? You see clear distinction between the formal institutions and the social forces. So it's a class war-like situation. Second, there's also a regional angle here. North and the northeast, many of them have smaller ethnic minorities. They're not necessarily all of the Thai ethnic stock. Some of these provinces up north near Chiang Mai, which is Thaksin's home territory, have been incorporated into Thailand only like 100-120 years ago. And there has been an attempt, as Ninad was mentioning, to spread a kind of majoritarian consensus over provinces that have not necessarily believed in giving up their local languages and their traditions and so on, and to assimilate into the larger Thai nationalist ideology. So all these factors are going to come out, and I think the courts are doing a disservice. But how do you change the court? I mean, at the end of the day, the so-called legal system can only be transformed through massive political change. So I think Thailand is heading towards some kind of revolutionary upsurge. I mean, that's the only option left, because if the military comes out and starts shooting people on the streets in order to curb and control the fervor, how long can they do it? So I think you're going to see movement towards revolutionary political change.
Okay. Professor Chaulia, I'll continue with you. Now, elections have been announced for July 20th, but the opposition holds the key. Do you think the opposition would be willing to participate, the Democratic Party?
Maybe they will this time, because, they have succeeded in a way. Although the popular protests, their mobilization did not succeed, through the courts they managed to unseat Yingluck. So now they may feel that they have broken the back, because the Shinawatra clan itself is no longer formally in power. They're going to nominate, someone lower down the ranks to represent them and be like kind of a placeholder for the Shinawatras to try and stage a comeback. So I think now the so-called Democrat Party and its allies, who have been, who have a vision which is totally, 19th century, which is based on bringing back an aristocratic form of government with a so-called nominated People's Council and so on. They will probably, contest this time, thinking that their chances are improved because of all in a way, they have softened the Shinawatras. But I think the reaction from the grassroots is going to be pretty strong, because people see that the Shinawatras are almost like victims now. So their voter base is going to turn out again in large numbers. So the dilemma for the opposition parties is, if they contest, they're going to be beaten for sure, fair and square. If they don't contest, then anyway the opposition, the Shinawatras party, Pheu Thai or whatever successor comes out of it, will sweep. So I think they are going to try and see if they can use the window between now and July or postpone it a little further to try and weaken the Shinawatra. They are gloating. If you see, since the court has ordered Yingluck to be out, they are celebrating and they're saying goodbye and don't come back, Shinawatras. So I think they are going to now sense an opportunity or a window. But the reality is that even in the past, when such windows have opened up, they have not been able to capitalize simply because their agenda is very, very narrow and caters to elite sections of the Thai society only. They're not even middle class representing party, and it's certainly not middle class all over the country. So I think they will try and drag this out. They may contest the elections if they get a sense that they can somehow make inroads. But frankly speaking, the demographics and the social realities are against them. So they might prefer, some kind of, monarchical rule with some aristocratic council, and that's what they're going to push now, I think. The agenda will be that elections, they say, they deride the masses, calling them buffaloes and, hillbillies and so on. And the idea is that they believe that, we need some kind of philosopher king like, in ancient Greek times. So it's totally out of sync with our current, global political norms. But nonetheless, they're trying to use this moment to push ahead with that kind of agenda. Suthep Thaugsuban, these kind of figures essentially are, from that coterie of the royalists. And they have been alleging that Thaksin's real agenda is to create a republic in Thailand. Although it's not proven, Somdi Lingthongkul, these are some of the key figures in the yellow shirt movement, conservatives, who have been alleging that there is a plot, a so-called Finland plot and so on, to overthrow the monarchy. And they're going to now use this window of the next few months to try and say that we need to tighten the controls and prevent these people from coming. In a way, it's like Egypt, There is this mass support behind the Muslim Brotherhood, but this establishment, the army, the military and the conservative elites don't want them to ever succeed, and they're going to try and use every means possible. I mean, you can't even overrule a situation like in Indonesia, where the military, pushed forward some candidate like Yudhoyono to become a president by adopting civilian fatigue. Same we are seeing in General Sisi in Egypt, which will then be backed by the military. So they will try to create a popular force. But to be popular, I think the ideological question, they are not able to go beyond their limits, which is to redistribute wealth to society, to make it more equitable. 65% of the population is still rural. So that is where the majority lies.
Right.
So unless they appeal to them and change the game, elections are not going to help the conservative establishment.
Okay. Professor Chaulia, let's focus on the cost of this entire turmoil. It has hit the Thai economy hard. The GDP growth this year is expected to be just 1.9%, which is far below its potential.
Last year also it was barely 3%. The final quarter was 0.5 or something like that. And the fear is of investor flight. When the protesters had occupied the financial district in Bangkok, this was I'm talking about a couple of years ago, and that was when there were fears that it's going to tank. But I think by allowing Yingluck to rule, in a way they diffuse the popular upswell from below, from 2011 onwards. But now that they have gone back to square one and unceremoniously removed her, I think it's going to come back. I mean, so the pressure will be there. Second, manufacturing, it's all export-oriented largely. And financial and manufacturing sectors could be hurt because of the fear of instability from investors. That is there. Regionally, ASEAN, none of the countries are really booming. But remember, Thailand is supposed to be one of the so-called tiger cub economies, which followed the Asian tigers. But the fruits of the growth have been very unevenly distributed. So that has led to, in many ways, accumulation of more grievances. So there is growth, and during Thaksin's time, rural poverty was halved in just 5 years, 2001, 2006. Through all these social welfare schemes and so on, he had literally halved the rural poverty. But since then, the upheavals have not kept up, allowed the momentum to keep going towards more equitable distribution of the economic pie. So one is the, Damocles' sword of the investors and the potential of capital flight. Two is the, demand for, greater equity within the society. And these two mean that the economic prospects are not that great. I think the neighboring countries will also, with whom, as you know, there's a lot of trade going on within the ASEAN, intra-ASEAN trade, because it's a common market. There also, I think, there will be fears about ricochet effect of the Thai instability in the whole region. So Thailand, I don't see them, coming back to prime health as a kind of another, tiger, which is with renewed life. Rather, I think they're looking at, eking out, marginal growth, which is not good, even for the elites, because they would want, high growth in order to transfer more profits overseas and hide them away in tax havens and so on. So, in a way, they're digging their own graves. I mean, if you think about it, the establishment, by being so non-compromising and by resorting to all means foul and fair to have their way, is, plunging the economy deeper into crisis. In the long run, that's going to hurt their, pocketbooks as well.
Okay, so you're saying this perception that Thailand is on the brink, it's on the verge of collapse, it's not going to affect foreign investors. Professor Chaulia, you wanted to add something?
I just wanted to say that, the boom that we talk about, even in good times, was a bubble. And it was very, very limited in terms of its, reach across the Thai society. So when you create these kind of extremely unequal outcomes, the reaction from below is going to be very, very strong. So I would not rule out, a stormy phase for the Thai economy in the coming times, simply because the frustrations have been pent up, and all these actions, these unconstitutional removals and unconstitutional, ousters, are going to add to the anger. So growth, is meaningless. We've seen even Egypt before Mubarak's fall was being praised by the IMF for 6 or 7% growth, and it was being said that it was very stable. So, we have to be cognizant about the time in which we are living. It's a different era where there is horizontal mobilization of masses, and I'm expecting, greater move towards a revolutionary direction.
Okay, all right. Well, with that, it's time for me to wrap up this discussion here. I'd like to thank all my guests for coming to the studios. It was a pleasure having you all here. That's it for now in this edition of Insight. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.